Vincent Price is one of the most iconic horror movie actors of all time. From his signature laugh to his over the top delivery to his unforgettable face, nobody can deny that he certainly made his mark on the world of cinema. And if you were to ask most people what watching a Vincent Price movie was like, they'd probably say that he usually played the fun villain in horror movies in an extremely over the top performance. And while that is certainly true, he most definitely had roles like that. I believe he was actually a much better actor than most people give him credit for. Because I'm pretty sure that when most people think of Vincent Price, they're thinking of roles he had towards the end of his life, such as in The Gray Mouse Detective or The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, where he was deliberately going over the top and playing off of his famous horror movie and villain image. But if you were to go back and actually look at his roles from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, one might find that he was actually a very versatile actor. And today I'd like to go over a few of these movies to demonstrate my point, because this man could be as scary, tragic, hilarious, or as over the top as any script needed him to be. And as I said before, I don't think he gets enough credit for it. But like usual, there may be spoilers for one or two of the movies mentioned, so in case you don't want anything ruined, just be on the lookout for that. And also keep in mind that this is just my personal opinion here. I have no formal training or knowledge on the craft of acting, just what I've picked up from my many years of watching movies. Nothing more. All right. So, with all of that out of the way, let's get right into it. Okay. So, the movie that really launched Vincent Price to stardom and made him a horror movie icon was the 1953 movie House of Wax. But if you were to look at the career he had before that, many would probably be surprised to learn that throughout the 40s and early 50s, he usually played supporting parts in either dramas or noirs. In fact, one of his first roles was in the noir masterpiece Laura, where he easily plays the nervous, unenthusiastic fiance of the title character so well that half the people watching it probably wouldn't even know it's him at first, as he's very young in this movie and playing a completely different character than he'd become known for. But at the same time, he also completely blends in and effortlessly fools the audience, as his character is actually a major red herring, and Price completely sells his character's suspicious nature. And to use another example starring the same actress, Price also had a small part in the 1945 movie Leave Her to Heaven, where he's also playing the fiance of the main character, only this time he's very enthusiastic about it. So when she brushes him off and marries somebody else instead, he obviously isn't too happy about it. But where Price's acting talent really shows through is at the end of the movie. And a quick spoiler warning in case you don't want to know what happens, but long story short, the main character manipulates events so it'll look like her husband and cousin conspired to murder her. And what lawyer would be trying to convict them of just that than her former fiance, Vincent Price? Now, keep in mind that the whole movie hinges on a couple of scenes working and having the audience feel the fear and tension of what's going to happen next. And the courtroom scene is one of them. In other words, it's all on Price's shoulders to have the audience feel genuinely afraid for the two characters they've not only grown to like, but know are completely innocent. And he pulls it off perfectly. Though the character tries to pass himself off as a lawyer simply doing his job, you can feel that it's actually very personal on his end, and through his aggressive examinations of the characters, can tell that he's going to do everything he can to convict these two for the woman he loved and lost. Basically, Price kills it in this scene as a scorned lover on the warpath. And considering the climax hinges on him being able to do a great job at that, one could argue that his performance is what really makes the climax of the movie. And never once does he in any way go over the top. His performance here is completely grounded, and that's what makes him feel like such a threat to the other characters. Or to use a third movie he did with that same actress, just look at his performance as a drug addict in Dragonwyck, in a role that was actually meant for Gregory Peck, no less. You'll never say the man couldn't act after seeing that movie. But unlike the other two, I won't give away anything here so you can fully experience it for yourself if you wish. But on the other end of the spectrum, Price could also be really funny if the role called for it as well. And one of the earliest examples of that is a 1950 movie called His Kind of Woman, starring Robert Mitchum and Jane Russell. Now, at first glance, a straight noir, the movie actually turns out to be pretty lighthearted, and one of the most amusing parts is Vincent Price's performance. Playing a parody of Errol Flynn, Price's character is an actor that doesn't have a very high opinion of himself. But when a real adventure presents itself, he immediately jumps at the chance and lets his enthusiasm go to his head. And it's absolutely glorious to sit through. In this movie, Vincent Price certainly goes over the top, but it's more because it's his character doing as such rather than Price himself. In other words, his over the top nature is what makes the character funny, especially when it leaves the other characters either exasperated or rolling their eyes at his antics. And Price plays the part dead on, making sure to never overdo it and come across as annoying to the audience, only the other characters. And the result is that many people have said that it's Price that makes the movie, and that it's worth watching for him alone. But on the flip side, take a movie like The Comedy of Terrors, an early parody of slasher movies. This movie is much more comedy than terror, and is honestly really funny. But one of the funniest characters is once again Vincent Price. Only this time, he's playing the straight man, and he might just be even funnier than in His Kind of Woman because of it. He plays the annoyed, scrupulous, and easily frustrated coroner to a T. Everything about his performance is excellent, from his dynamic with Peter Lorre to his angry outbursts, and even when the final act is nothing but him and Lorre having to deal with the stubborn Basil Rathbone, he still manages to find ways to have the audience laughing. And he does it all without almost ever going over the top. So my point here is, when he wanted to be funny, he could most definitely deliver, and in quite a few different ways at that. And even if you look at what he's most famous for, his horror movies, he could be really scary when he wanted to be. For example, in House of Wax, he actually plays the villain completely straight and never goes over the top. And the sheer menace that radiates from him at certain points is really impressive. Take his famous line, "You shouldn't have done that, my dear." If you've never heard him say that line, just believe me when I say that he says that line a lot more menacing and a lot less hammy than you'd probably expect from him. And this applies to many of his other horror movies as well. Just believe me when I say, I was one of those people who believed that he tended to be a more fun and over the top kind of bad guy than a scary one. But boy, was I proven wrong. There have been quite a few performances I've seen of his that left me absolutely terrified of him with no trace of the hammy actor we all know him as. And if you don't believe me, then you haven't seen any of his more scary movies. My point is, Vincent Price became a horror movie icon for a reason. It wasn't just because he could play a fun, over the top villain, but also because he was a really great actor that could leave the audience absolutely horrified when he so chose. Whether he was playing a tragic monster, a pure evil villain, or an innocent man tangled in forces he doesn't understand, this man could deliver. And it's no mystery to me why the great Christopher Lee himself was considered his only equal when it came to horror movies for a very long time. Heck, even the original 1958 version of The Fly proved that he could also play the scared and confused innocent bystander to all the horror going on, as well as the monsters themselves. So, if I haven't already made it very clear, my point is that Vincent Price was actually a really good actor, and a much better one than is often given credit for. Because once again, yes, it is true that he did play his share of fun and hammy villains, but as I've spent the whole video trying to prove, those were only one fraction of his total career. And even what I covered only scratches the surface of it, because if one were to actually go over his entire filmography, they would find that he was actually an actor with an extremely large range that always gave the best performance he could, even when settled with the worst of scripts. And that's another notable thing about him. Even when he was playing inconsequential or generic parts, he still found a way to make his characters stick out and be memorable. And if you ask me, that is the mark of a truly great actor. To be both good and memorable, no matter what part you're playing or how badly written it is. Though, of course, I'm no acting expert by any means, but I'm pretty sure most people would agree with me on that regardless. Alright, I think that's everything I wanted to say. So now I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Vincent Price was a better actor than is often given credit for, or do you believe he has the reputation he deserves? Please feel free to tell me in the comments. And thank you all for watching. I very greatly appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.